Welcome back, everybody, to Who's Your Band. I am Jeffrey Paul. I'm joined by my co-host again this week, Mr. Sean Morton. How are you, Sean?
I'm wonderful, Jeffrey. Looking forward to this episode greatly today.
Yeah, me too, man. I've been wanting to get this guy on this show for over a year, and it just kind of came together real quick. So let's introduce our guest, because this guy he's a singer, he's an actor, he's a director, he is a cultural icon. He's a Renaissance man. Let's welcome Mr. Don Most. How are you, Don?
Jeffrey, I'm good. Good. Thanks for having me on.
We are really excited, man. You know what? This is why I like having you on, particularly right now, because you are a Brooklyn guy, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Me and you are Brooklyn guys. Sean is a Jersey guy. We outnumber him 2-1 today.
What part of Brooklyn were you from? Did you grow up?
I was initially from Canarsie, Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. And
remember Canarsie?
Yeah. I think. I do. Might have swam against them because I was on the swimming team at Erasmus Hall High School and in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn. I think we swam against Canarsie. I'm pretty sure.
You know, Erasmus wound up becoming like a real football powerhouse still to this day.
Oh, I think I heard that. Yeah. We weren't really the powerhouse back in my day. Once in a while, we had a good team, but not a powerhouse. That's for sure. Basketball, though, was always strong. They were good in basketball. Yeah.
I could see that. So when you were growing up in Brooklyn, did you know as a kid in high school that you wanted to get involved in show business, or were you into something else?
Before high school, I knew pretty young that I wanted to pursue it. I wouldn't admit it right away, but I was about 9 years old when I saw the movie The Jolson Story about the great Al Jolson, and I was floored by the film. They had $1 Million Movie on back then. You know, where they'd show the movie twice a night, every night, and then four times on Saturday and 4 times on Sunday. So after I saw it that first time, like I said, I'm 9 years old, but there was something about the music, Jolson's talent. I know Larry Parks played Jolson brilliantly, but it still came, that whole the style of that music and the great standards. And Jolson was, he was considered the greatest entertainer back then. So, I was very impressionable, and I became a Jolson fan, bought albums, and then was singing along to Jolson all the time in the living room. And then by the time I was 13...
What year was this about, Donnie? Don, what year was this?
Well, when I was 13, it was 66.
So in 66, you're a kid listening to Al Jolson?
Yeah. Well, I was actually 1962 when I was listening to Jolson. 62.
You're not listening to Elvis. You're not. The Beatles are breaking out. You're listening to Al Jolson.
Well, then the Beatles came out and all that. I mean, I listened to the rock and roll that was going on then too, but it was different. There was something about what Jolson was doing that was a whole different thing. So, and then I started listening to WNEW every night before going to sleep on the radio. William B. Williams was the DJ, and he would play Sinatra and Ella and all the greats, all the great
awesome
of the standards. And I would listen every night. And I got the education, started singing, Sammy and Frank, and then my man, Bobby. I was a Bobby Darin nut. When I was about 11, 12, I saw him in a movie, then went out and bought his albums. And then I was singing to Bobby. And then I saw Bobby at the Copacabana when I was 18. Because it wasn't the rock and roll thing of Bobby that got me. It was, he could do the standards. He could do jazz and blues and swing as good as just any of them. And that's what got me. So then by the time when I was 13, I got into a school in Manhattan that I'd go to on Saturdays for singing and acting and dancing. And I got handpicked by the guy who ran the studio. He had an act that he produced of some of his top teenagers. And and booked like a nightclub act, and I got picked to be in it. So I spent the summer that I was turning 15 in the Catskill Mountains, singing in nightclubs, all the hotels in Catskill Mountains when I was turning 15 that summer.
Oh my God.
So it was music before acting, really. I say singing is my first love. And so I knew, and I was also, then I switched my focus to acting after that summer and got real serious about the acting. But music was always a big, it's in my blood from way back then.
As a fan of Happy Days, okay, I knew you could sing on this episode. It's a terrible episode. Oh, just hear me out for a second, okay? It was a Valentine's Day episode, okay? Oh, yeah. And everybody had like a segment to sing. And I remember like Scott Baio's segment was just brutal. Some of them were really, really bad. But you sang My Funny Valentine. And let me tell you, it was like I wanted to make fun of it, but you were so good. It was really good. Like you wanted, like, oh man, this is corny. You had chops. You could, and like you knew you were a legit singer. And I had never seen that side of you up until that point. And that's when I started to follow you, like even after, because I watched this on reruns, Right. And I was like, and when I saw like you started putting out music, I started like looking into your music, and dude, you could sing. You could sing.
Oh, thanks. Well, have you heard the CD that's out now? Mostly Swinging?
Well, this is what I listened to. I loved the Christmas album. And there were two songs that really stood out. And I do like the style of swing as well. But two songs really stood out to me. Where like, I can't believe this is Don Most singing, because it doesn't even sound like you. Like, because again, I know you from watching it on TV. Right. The Man with the Bag, I think, is great. I think it's great. It's a really good Christmas song. Oh, thanks. And the Christmas song, you put a very Tony Bennett feel to it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the Christmas song. Well, that was Nat King Cole, who was one of my idols growing up. I loved Nat. I used to watch his TV show all the time. And I always loved that song. So when the producer said, I did a CD with this producer, Willie Murillo, before this. It's called Mostly Swinging, with a great big band of some of the top LA jazz and studio guys, and all the great standards, not all the, some of the great standards that really swing. And he said, we should do a Christmas CD and do a swinging one, And I said, oh, I'm totally into that. And because I remembered hearing Louis Armstrong had a Christmas CD that I loved, and I said, and I think that's where I saw Man with the Bag, and so I said we have to do that, and he loved that one too. Then I said, can we do the Christmas song, Nat? It's so identified and so iconic to Nat, and part of me is going, do you dare do that? But I love Nat so much, and I knew that I could sing that, I could sing in that kind of tonality pretty well. So he said, yeah, let's do it. And he convinced me, and I'm glad he did, because it came out really nice. I'm glad and Tony Bennett was another one of the guys that I listened to all the time. So those influences are there, pretty strong.
He's putting out his final album right now too, Tony Bennett.
Yeah, because he pretty much retired. So
yeah, Lady Gaga dragged him out for one more album, apparently.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. What is he,
94 years old. Wow, it's amazing. I will say I saw him like 20 years ago. So he was still in his mid 70s. And I saw him at Carnegie Hall opening up with, what was her name? Katie Lang.
Oh, wow.
It was really, she was just coming off like her big period. And let me tell you, man, he sang for like 2 hours in his mid 70s and just blew everybody out of the water. It was an amazing experience.
What a voice. Yeah. What a singer.
Tony, that whole generation is slowly fading away. And, people who listen to, Jeff and I are music addicts, but like you hear people who are just like into like one specific genre, like, and they don't appreciate some of the stuff that came out between like, the 50s and the 60s and 70s. And it's a generation that's slowly fizzling away. Like when you see these, I don't know if you've seen them on TV, like the PBS specials where they sell the DVDs and they're saying how, hey, the Miracles are playing, and there's
Right.
like there's 4 guys in the band. One's 87 years old and the rest are in their 30s.
Right. Right.
You know, it's a generation that people need to listen to a little more, I think, because the quality of music is really amazing.
Oh yeah, I sang at an event last week in Wisconsin, and Joe Coleman, one of the original Platters, was there, and he sang, and he was still sounding great. But he does some of those things where, you know, as long as there's maybe one original guy there, and then they could bring in people who can simulate the sound, you know,
Sure.
and keep it alive, which is nice. It's just great.
Did the producers of Happy Days know that you can sing?
That's a whole long story, because when I do my shows, you know, I sing in, you know, clubs or theaters, and people are like, especially in the beginning, like, holy cow, we didn't know you could sing like this, and how come you didn't sing more on Happy Days? You know, why was it just Potsy? And there's I usually tell a funny story, and I won't take all the time to tell all of it now, and Anson has a book out called, Anson Williams, who played Potsy, called Singing to a Bulldog. And in it, there's a chapter about that where he convinced Gary Marshall very early in the first season. He's saying, you know, Gary, you got the 50s, you got the cars, you got the poodle skirts, everyone dressed up, you got all of that, but you don't have the music. And we could have a band that, you know, plays. And Gary was like, well, what do you do? And Ann says, well, you know, I sing. And Gary says, are you any good? And Ann says, no, I'm pretty good. So so that he convinced Gary to let him do, you know, read the book and you'll hear the funny part of the story. But he convinced Gary to let him try it. And it went well. And then they did more and more. And I'm like going, you know, I was singing 5 years earlier in the nightclub act. And so I was frustrated, because it's like, I'd like to get a chance. So I set up a meeting with Gary, my manager, and I went in and had a serious meeting, and I pleaded my case. But Gary was like, you know, hey, he goes, if I had an act where I needed a juggler, I wouldn't need 2 jugglers. And then he kind of put it to bed. And basically, he didn't want to mess with, he had established Potsy as a singer. I was more the comedian. He didn't want to mess with it. So, but it was frustrating for me back then. But I put the music aside also, because in the 70s and early 80s, that music was looked upon as my grandparents' music or my parents' music, you know, even then in the 70s and 80s. But, you know, now that it's come back, you know, in the 90s and since then, it came back in vogue, the Great American Songbook with Harry Connick kind of brought it back, and Tony doing
Rod
that.
Stewart as well.
And Rod Stewart's done like 5 albums of standards, and Diana Krall, Natalie Cole was a big part of that too. So I said, if I'm ever going to do it, this is the time. This is the music that I love. Not that I didn't. I also, you know, I grew up during what we call the classic rock era. You alluded to the Beatles, and I love all that music and still do. And on my new CD, I'm introducing a little bit of some of the. I do jazz stuff. It's more contemporary jazz. It's not the big band style. And we do I do the Smoke from a Distant Fire, which was the Sanford Townsend Band, if you remember. And
Love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song. So
talk a little bit about your new album that's out. I would like to hear a little bit more about that.
All right. Well, the album that's out now is called Be Mostly Swinging. And that's the Sinatra stuff and Bobby Darin and Dean, great with a swing, with a real, it's mostly swing. There's a couple of ballads. I do one for my baby, of course, to just piano at the end. But it's. Do
you play any instruments?
No, I don't play. I played a little piano when I was young. I played a little piano, but so that album is mainly swing with an incredible band, but it's not your grandfather's swing. I mean, this is it's got modern kind of sensibilities, and it kicks. It really it rocks. Swing can rock. But what I'm doing now, and I'm leaving for Nashville in 2 weeks. I started working on another CD with a producer based in Nashville, a guy named Tony Mantor, great producer. And he said, I'd love to produce you, but we'll do some jazz standards, but not with a big band, with a more contemporary jazz kind of configuration. And, more like a smaller, broken down kind of band. And we picked out some great songs and they were going well, but we decided let's also integrate some, like I said, Smoke from a Distant Fire. We do Ooh Baby Baby, the Smokey Robinson, Ain't No Sunshine, Bill Withers.
Oh man, Bill Withers, great song.
Yeah.
But you wait, hold on a second. With that song, Ain't No Sunshine, that's kind of like almost like a slower, bluesier song. Did you add a jazz arrangement on that?
No, not really. Tony's real smart. We don't jazz it up. It's just we treat it kind of bluesy and all that. Maybe it has a tiny bit of a jazz element, but it just kind of fits because the jazz approach to the songs that we're doing are not, like I said, the big band. It's a more contemporary thing. So the guitars are important and the basic kind of feel of it. It's jazz, but it's also a little bit of popish, or there's a little bit of blues in there. So the Bill Withers thing with the blues aspect of it fit. Just like we did Smoke from a Distant Fire, we slowed it down and did it very bluesy. So it fits. So it'll be really interesting to see how it all comes together. I leave in 2 weeks, and we have 4 songs to finish it up, and hopefully it'll be out maybe early 22.
I really like the version of Blue Skies because I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan. I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan. That was a great version of it.
Oh, you're a huge. What? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So I'm a very big Willie Nelson fan too. Growing up my whole life, I love the version of Blue Skies a lot. Oh, yeah. I really did.
But you heard mine on the Mostly Swinging CD.
Yeah. No, I just threw that random freaking song out, Don, hoping that you knew what I was talking about.
Well, cool. I'm glad you heard it. We based that on. There was a Dinah Washington version that I really loved, and a version by a group called, you probably never heard, but you should check them out, LaVey Smith and her Red Hot Skillet Lickers.
You're absolutely right. I have never heard of them.
In fact, I have everything they've ever recorded.
LaVey Smith? Okay. Well, anyway, they're out of San Francisco. They're really good. And they did a version of Blue Skies that, you're laughing, but I've met people who totally know LaVey.
No, here's the reason why I'm laughing. Okay, Sean and I are both stand-up comedians, right? And we travel. I was in Florida in April, and sometimes I get booked on these 55 and older community type of shows. I don't know if you ever, they're good, and they have they draw big crowds. The money's good, and the show that you're there for like a week, and the show I was on is 2 comedians and a musical act. The comedians do a half hour each. The musical act does 45 minutes. I was with Frieder and the boys. Okay, Frieder is about 75. The boys are about 87 each. Okay, right. So when you wouldn't the name of that band that you were just talking about, that's what it made me think of.
Well, they're great. They're really good. And anyway, I kind of played her version and Dinah Washington's version, and for Willie Maria, who produced us Mostly Swinging, and then we came up with our own one. But those were the influences, and so I'm glad you like Blue Sky, Sean. Yeah, it's a good arrangement, and it was a lot of fun to do. But all of those songs on that CD, I think Willie totally nailed the arrangements, and I had a blast doing it. Just a great time.
We're gonna go between music and Happy Days, because our listeners are gonna want to hear a little bit about that. But so in Happy Days, you were, like you mentioned, you were kind of like the funny guy. At any point in your career, did you ever want to do stand-up comedy?
Oh no, never. I was never
really.
I was never the comedian in real life. I was in high school. My friends were there. I knew guys like that, and I would be their straight man. I was the quiet, shy, introverted guy. I was never, had no interest. And even after, say, big success on Happy Days, you might say, oh, well, why didn't you parlay that and do? I could never have done stand-up comedy because to me, I was not that guy. I was taking on a role. I could act like a guy who's that. I could become that guy, but that's not who I am. And I'm not comfortable. If I was playing a comedian who was doing a stand-up routine, that I could do. But I couldn't go on as me and do a stand-up routine. I couldn't do it.
It's funny how your character kind of evolved on that show. Because I remember in the first season, you were kind of almost like more of a self-assured, like kind of like a wise guy, almost like a jock type of a guy.
Right.
You would bust Richie's chops a little bit. You were kind of cooler than Posse and Richie.
Yeah.
You got chicks, you got girls, and then as the show started to evolve, you became like, again. That's why I thought maybe you liked comedy because they had you doing a lot of, like, you wanted to be a stand-up. Wasn't there an episode where you were going to quit to do stand-up?
Where I was going to quit what?
Weren't you going to quit college or something to become a stand-up comedian?
I don't know I don't quite remember. It's possible. It's been a while, but you're absolutely right. There was an evolution there because at the beginning, all they told me was, you see, because I was auditioning for the role of Potsy, and then they called my agent and said, Anson's going to do that, but the executives loved his screen test so much they want to put him in the show, make the role.
Before they did the segment on Love American Style, or was this after Love American Style?
After the Love American Style, what happened there was they did a pilot about almost 2 years before the one that I did that got on the air. It was about 2 years earlier, 1970, 71, and it didn't sell. So they, wanted to get something out of for the money. They laid it off on the Love American Style, as an episode. But then,
and Anson was in that.
Yeah, Anson played Potsy, and Ron Howard played Richie. And there was Marion was the mom, but there was a different dad, and there was a different daughter, and there was no Fonzie, no Ralph, and it didn't sell. So then, about a year and a half later, American Graffiti comes out, and then Grease comes out on Broadway. So the ABC execs are like, oh, wait a minute, didn't we have a show about the 50s, But they said to Gary, you have to make a new pilot because they were worried that Anson and Ron would be too old. And they wanted a new pilot. And Gary was like, no, they're not too old. But ABC made Gary screen test Ron and Anson, who had already done the show, had shot a pilot. But they had to screen test against a bunch of other hopefuls, and me being one of those other hopefuls.
How did you even get to do the screen test? Because you're a guy in Brooklyn. I think you went to school in Pennsylvania. Now, how'd you journey out to California and even get the screen test for this thing?
Well, I'd been after that summer where I was singing. I was going to a more serious acting workshop, and I started really getting into it, and I was able to get a manager, and I started going out on a lot of auditions, and I started landing commercials, which was big in the late 60s, early 70s. New York was the mecca for commercials. I mean, still probably is, but even more so then. So I did a lot of big nationals. I did like 40 commercials in 4 years while I was my last year of high school and then 3 years of college, while I was in Pennsylvania. I was taking a bus from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to Manhattan for these auditions all the time. I was like crazy. And for a 5-minute audition, I'd be on the bus for 3 hours, and then go back. But I went out, then I decided after the summer, after my junior year, to go to California and spend the summer trying to get some doors opened up, get my feet wet. And then that way, when I graduated a year later, maybe I try it out in LA. So I did, but things started happening when I got out there that summer. I was able to get an agent, and I landed a few guest starring roles on TV shows, and, one thing led to another. And then I wound up staying, not going back for my senior year. The agent said, take 6 months off, keep the momentum going, So that's what I did. And then that led to, I got another part, and then I got the audition for Happy Days, which led to another audition and then a screen test. And then they told me I didn't get it. Anson was going to play Potsy again, but they wanted to create a role for me because the executives really liked my screen test. So Ralph, they described as kind of a jock who, he was into cars, and that was about it. And then on the pilot, he was kind of like a wisecracking. He was a bit of a wisecracker. Like you said, he was a little cooler. He's showing off his hickey in the pilot. Right. I'm showing off my hickey. Yeah. So he was a little bit cooler, a little bit, but he wasn't a close friend of Richie and Potsy's. He was a little guy. And Ralph was the guy off to the side. But as they started making our characters more and more integral, it started to change and evolve, and they went in a little different directions. Just like Fonzie hardly spoke in those first 5-6 episodes. He would give a thumbs up, and his body language, he'd say a couple of words, and he was as cool as can be. Mm-hmm. But you think about how much his character evolved from where he was in the first season, and then we went in front of an audience by the third season, and he's like, it's totally different.
You said one word at the end
when he was a teacher.
Yeah.
He made Fonzie a teacher at the end.
Well, that was years later. I was gone by then.
I know. Well, she was going to ask you a question, but I got a question to ask you about why you left.
So you said one word, which I think is very pivotal, and it's character, right?
Right.
And I always felt like a lot of the TV comedies in like the 70s and 80s had these standout characters, that were, you don't really see a lot on like the ensemble cast that you see on these TV shows now. But being that there was such a memorable character, do you feel like that was a little harder for you to break out of that character? Like when you're going out for auditions in the 80s and 90s after that?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And the other element that made it difficult was today, you're on a series, and then you do a movie. And then you're in a movie and you do a series. You go back, and people go back and forth. Back then, it was very hard to go from a TV series into films. Back then, it was very difficult, and it was like different classes. And also, you have to remember that there were only 3 networks for the most part. So there was no cable, there was no internet, there was none of this. So there's 3 channels. We would have 50, 60 million people watching us on Tuesday nights, as opposed to a hit now that's 5 million, 6 million. So, the syndrome of getting typecast was much more prevalent because you have so many people knowing you from the show. So yes, back you would get typecast much more readily, and especially a show like, you're talking about where the characters are kind of, really maybe even a little bigger than life. And from a sitcom to break out is tougher than a drama, I think. So it was very challenging. And, but I kept plugging away. And, I would do this, I would do that theater and get a role that I'd have a chance to show something else, and that lead to another one and some independent films and more. And in the last 3 years, I think because I'm getting older has helped too, to separate me getting older.
Absolutely.
But I've been doing I've done 4 films since November. And
everything you've done has been completely different.
Especially as of late.
The range of roles that you're playing.
Yeah, really interesting roles. I would go from playing a pastor to a polygamist, and then from a polygamist to a king, and then a prison guard, a king to a prison guard, and and then a career criminal, then the CEO of a big company. So I love that. That's what, to me, I went into acting about. So it's happening now more than, I wanted this 20 years ago, but it was tough. I was able to work, but I'm grateful for what's been happening as of late, and I'm just praying it continues.
Both Sean and I, besides doing stand up, we act. I got a break a couple of years ago. I got cast in a Scorsese film Yeah, The Irishman. You heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I have to see The Irishman.
You should watch it, Don. After this interview, are you in California right now?
Yes.
All right, so we'll be done about 5:00 your time. If you started on Netflix at about 5:15, it'll be over by Wednesday morning.
What Sean is saying, it's a long movie. But here's the thing, though, is like as an actor, actors would kill. Think about people would kill to get a reoccurring role on a hit TV show. And then I think, was it by season 7 that you left Happy Days on your own accord? So where do you get the guts to say, you know what, I'm going to break away from this. I'm going to break away from this steady work, this steady paycheck, and get away from that. That had to be a tough decision for you, yes?
It was a tough decision, very tough. And, you know, some people say, well, maybe it wasn't gutsy, maybe it was stupid. And there are times when I've thought that myself, maybe I was stupid. But no, I don't even really regret it. It was sort of something I really knew I had to do then to try to break away, because, you know, I'm playing the same character for 7 years. As Sean alluded to, you know, you're getting, it's such that Fonzie character, Ralph character, so you get so associated with it. And I was, you know, if I was a comedian, if I was a stand-up comedian, then it would have been different, because then I'd make, you know, okay, I could still keep doing my comedy and I'll use this. But I wasn't that guy, and I wasn't a comedian. I was an actor, and I wanted to act, and I wanted to have a career that went beyond when that show's over. I want to have it for the rest of my life. So I felt the scripts, the quality of the scripts was not what it had been.
You're 100% right about that.
Was that before or right after he jumped the shark?
It was after. It was after. You know,
Don, you were in that iconic episode. You were going to drive the boat.
Yeah,
wearing a striped shirt.
But then Richie drove the boat. Yeah, no, it was that episode happened before I left, but I was still under contract. So it was when my contract was up, and the scripts were getting worse and worse. I thought there was still some good ones. All of a sudden, there'd be a really good episode, but then the next 3 would be pretty bad. So that was a big part of it. But I'll tell you something which I've only recently started telling people, and I talked in an interview about this the other day. I didn't talk about this. I don't know. I felt maybe it was out of line to do this, but now I don't think it is. I was really unhappy, and I felt it was time to move on and all that. But, you know, I had a lot of people giving me the reasons why I should stay. So I said to my manager, okay, here's what we should tell them. Tell them that they were now going to give me, because it was a new contract to stay, they were offering me by far the biggest raise that I had been offered, because up until then I was under contract, and there were bumps each year and you'd get more. But now they were offering me much bigger raise than they had ever offered me. So I said, tell them, forget the raise. I'll do it without the raise. I'll come back, and you don't have to even give me any more money than you were paying me before. But give me a chance to do a TV movie on ABC, which the show was on, or a supporting role in a film at Paramount, where they were Paramount was producing the show. So to do that, and then I don't even need the raise. They wouldn't do it. So
why?
You tell me. I don't know. They
probably just trying to hold on to that intellectual property, I would think, right?
Why? Well, hold on to what? I left.
Yeah. What does that mean?
I left.
Intellectual. Why?
I have
I'm telling you that is that's a guy who has conviction, man. That's like backing it up. So what do you do from that point? Did you try to get into like putting an act together, doing some music, doing something completely different than what you had been doing for the 7 years before?
Well, I didn't really try anything with the music at that point yet. A little later I did, but at that point I was and I said to my agent, I don't even want to do television series for a while. I want to just try to do films and theater. And, like I said, it was very hard back then to do that. But I figured, look, I've done well for these last 6-7 years. I'm in a position where I can hang out, or hold out for a while, hold out for what I'm trying to do. So that's what I did. I said, I don't want to do another series. So I said, just films and theater. So I went like 9 months and I couldn't even get an audition for a movie.
Wow.
I couldn't even get an audition for a film. So, you know, it was a bit of a rude awakening, but then it was like, okay, I'll do some television, you know, but I got some, but it wasn't the kinds of roles I really was hoping to get. And so it was a struggle.
You were getting on everything though. I remember you I remember you were on Love Boat.
Yeah. That was after
Love Boat.
Yeah, I turned it down for the first, 2 years because I said I didn't want to do. And then finally, when I couldn't even get an audition, and then when the house that I figured I could always sell, and I had a house in Malibu. Okay, I'll sell that, and then I could hold out for longer. Well, all of a sudden, there's a landslide condition in the community and my house is now worth 10 cents on the dollar, so now I can't sell the house. It's crazy times that I was going through. So then I go, okay, maybe I'll do it.
Were you married?
Yeah, I was married. But so then that's when I decided I would start doing some television. And that's when I started doing a lot of those guest starring roles. But that was after all this went down.
Did you stay in touch after you left? Did you stay in touch with Ron Howard?
Yeah, we stayed in touch. I stayed in touch with Ron, and everyone to some degree, but everyone got busy doing different things, so it was a little hard. But I'd run into them, we'd see each other, and Ron and I continued to talk for a while. Especially when
the two of you were also both directors. You were also a director. Well,
yeah, my directing happened much later than his. He left the same year I did. He left the show Happy Days.
Right. You guys both went to the Army, right? Was that how they wrote?
That's how they explained our disappearance. But he did that because he wanted to pursue the directing, and I don't know whatever happened with that. But
it was probably a bad decision. He probably should have stayed on and jumped in, and this time jumped like an octopus or something.
Let's just say it the way we really want to say it. Clint Howard is definitely the most talented of that whole family. Let's just get that out of the way. Continue, Jeff.
Well, and Clint's he's a good character actor. Clint's very good.
Yeah. He is. Yeah. He's in everything.
But knew him on a film when he was trying to prove he could direct. I was doing an experimental film with him, developing it, starring in it. And then halfway through, he got an assignment to direct. So we continued talking. Then he cast me some years later in Ed TV. He gave me a nice little part. I'm hoping he'll call me again soon and put me in another one. But I didn't direct until my first one was 1999. So that was many years. Good many years later.
Do you do a lot of the convention circuits?
You mean like autographs and pictures? Sometimes, not a lot. But some, here, probably maybe 3 or 4 a year, maybe, something like that.
It's a huge market. Like I always remember, I'm in my mid 40s, but like Jeff said before, I used to watch the show on syndication growing up too. And then like a lot of the other shows like Good Times and, What's Happening and all these things. So I would still go to these conventions, and I went a few years ago and they had the whole cast from What's Happening there. Right. Oh, yeah. And the place lost their mind because it was like the first time that they had ever been out there, and they're screaming, "No Roger, no rerun, no rent." It's like the whole entire courtyard is screaming this, right? And so the reason I went there was to meet one of my heroes, which was Henry Winkler, because I was a huge fan of the show growing up, and he was one of my idols when I met him. And it's kind of strange when you see this iconic guy with the leather jacket and the motorcycle who just bashes his hand on a jukebox and it makes a play and the women are just dropping. And then when you meet him, he's just a little old Jewish grandfather.
I know.
He was so nice. Like he was painfully nice.
Yeah. That's Henry. And Henry, was never the Fonz. Just like I was saying, I was never really the comedian Ralph. you got to hand it to Henry. He did a brilliant job creating that character and playing the Fonz. And he's so completely diametrically different than that character. So different. And I'm so happy for him when he won the Emmy a couple of years ago for Barry,
right.
For the show Barry.
Brilliant role.
So it's about time, that kind of recognition, because, for years we weren't taking seriously our show. And I think they thought we were a bunch of, kids goofing off, having a good time, and didn't realize like we were working real hard. Henry was nothing like that guy. I was nothing like Ralph, and we had Gary Marshall as our exec producer and brilliant comedic mind. And Jerry Parrish was our director, who directed most of the old Dick Van Dyke shows. And he was brilliant. And, we had fun, but there were a lot of talented people on that show taking it seriously, working hard to make it look easy. That's what people realize now more than they did 30 years ago.
100%, because it's like on like these retro stations. It still kind of makes you popular, and like you'll sit there and like, let me see what Don Most is up to. Let's see what Ants is like. You see what these people are up to, and then like you start to go down the Don Most wormhole, and that's when I started listening to like the music, and then that episode came on, that awful that the Valentine's Day episode. But like you're like, man, and it's interesting. Like when you watch that episode, and then you listen to the music that you're putting out now, how it's really cool how much like your voice like changed and became like a real like freaking like real great like swing singer. Like it really did change.
The evolution from when you heard me do My Funny Valentine to what it is now.
Right.
Is that what you're?
Yeah. Like the power in your voice.
Yeah.
Like you had a nice singing voice, and you had very nice phrasing when you did My Funny Valentine.
Right.
When you heard some of the other people sing, it was just like stop.
Right.
But when you sang, like I didn't turn the channel, and I was like,
right.
you were good. And then when you hear the way you sing now, it's like you don't believe it's the same guy.
Yeah, well, I worked on it a lot. Some of it was also the nature of the song itself. My Funny Valentine is it's kind of a tender song. So, you're limited to some degree in terms of the dynamics of it. But there has been an evolution, I think, because when I decided I really wanted to do it, I think what's helped me a lot is the technology that exists today. Because back then, think about it. If I wanted to like rehearse or work on music, if you have a band, you can do that, or if you're a guitarist and pianist and you're writing music, you could work on it. But I didn't have that ability to work on it. But with the technology, I discovered these programs where I could take a song, Sinatra song, or whatever, and I could almost take most of the vocal out, and then put the tracks into GarageBand, and then sing like I got the Nelson Riddle Orchestra behind me, like Sinatra did, and record it. I was like a kid in a candy shop. I'm recording like hundreds of songs. I'm singing every song Sinatra ever did, and I'm singing Tony Bennett.
What are some of your favorite Sinatra songs?
Oh God, that's how do you pick?
Give us three.
Okay, Luck Be a Lady. Is Luck Be a Lady? I love.
The Guys and Dolls, right?
Yeah. I guess I've got You Under My Skin is up there. Lady is a Tramp, and then Fly Me to the Moon. There's four right off the top of my head, but you can name another 10. But I closed my show with Mac the Knife because
Bobby Darin.
Yeah, I closed with Mac. But so anyway, the technology, I think, working and then experimenting with all kinds of different songs, songs by some of the rock groups, where it was a song I always loved by the Eagles, or a song I always loved by, whoever. I could play around with that on GarageBand, So I think working it like that, my voice, and part of also just the maturing. The voice kind of matured as well, and but the work is what I think probably helped the most. The constantly exercising the muscle.
Well, we've seen a Pat Boone record. We've seen a David Hasselhoff record. What do I have to do to convince Don Most to do a heavy metal record?
Heavy metal, I don't think that's in the cards for me. I don't, but I guess never say
Look,
never.
I'm not saying like some horrible like Cannibal Corpse or stuff like that. I'm talking like your basics. Do like a Metallica song. Do like maybe a Godsmack. Something simple to start.
Well, let me sleep on it. Let me think about that.
What I'll do is I'm a computer music guy myself. I will go in, I will rip out all the vocals.
You do that. Let me see how that feels. I'm curious now.
I see two things in Don Most's future. One, because you're an older guy now and you still got the pipes, Broadway.
Yeah, I would love to do Broadway, and I think that could happen. I would be into that totally.
I mean, you definitely listen. You can act, you could sing, you got a look. If they did like Joe Biden the musical, you got the lead right now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
Well, but the other thing is. I'm in New York City. Sean is in New Jersey, but like on 54th Street, they have a club there called Under 54 where they have singers come in and they do the stands and everything. If you got to play that room, and if you do, I'm coming to see it.
54 Below?
54 Below, that's right.
Yeah, I've done that about 4 or 5 times, but it's been a couple of years since I've been there. 2-3 years. Yeah, I'll see if I can come back there. I like that.
I'll tell you what I would love to do. I would love to be able to set up a show with Don Most at the Friars Club in New York.
Oh, yeah.
George the Friar.
Great. I went to the Friars Club as somebody's guest and actually got up, just did a couple of songs. But to do a whole show there, I would be into that. Yeah.
I'm going to work on that because I am a friar, so I'm going to work on that.
Oh, great.
You would never be able to tell by the Guns N' Roses flag behind me, but I am a successful person.
And the picture of you pulling your hair out with the rage behind you.
Well, that's just from dealing with you every week, Jeffrey.
I like that picture. That's good.
Thank you.
That would be fun. Yeah, let's do that.
We can definitely do that.
All right.
Cool. Hey, what got you into directing, man? That directing looks hard.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a lot. I don't want to say it's easier acting, but it is in many respects. There's less pressure and less demands on you when you're acting, as opposed to the director who has to be on top of everything, on top of for months before you ever start shooting and for months after you finish shooting. So it is tough. But I don't know. What happened was, I knew one day I'd want to direct, but I figured it would be later. And then I got an opportunity, somebody to direct at a theater, to direct a play. So I took the opportunity and I said, let me see how it goes. And it went really well. I enjoyed it and it was successful. So I did some more. I directed some more theater. And then
did you call Ron for any advice?
Not during the theater stuff, not during that, because he hasn't directed theater. But then when I got my first, then I started looking for material, scripts that could be done on a low budget kind of level so that be easier to find the financing. And I found a script and I was introduced to a producer who had a good experience. He had done the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and some other films. So with him as a producer, we were able to raise some money, and I did my first film called The Last Best Sunday. It was a very dramatic piece, actually. There's not a lot of comedy in this, and it was difficult, but I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I've done 2 since then, 2 other. And then for that first one, I did call Ron, and I had some questions that I wanted, to get Ron's input. And
was he cool with you?
Totally cool. Yeah, I mean, we were great friends, and we're still, we're not as close as we were when we were seeing each other every day for all those years, but we still I see him, it's like, seeing your cousin, seeing the cousin you haven't seen in a while. So we're still tight. He was great. He answered, he gave me some good insight into some of the things I was curious about, and it was very helpful. So I've done 2 since then. I did another one called Moolah, which is comedy drama, pretty funny stuff. But then it gets a little hard for the family film, which was a real challenge because I had to work with kids and animals and no money. And that was a challenge. And I've got several really good projects that I'm hoping to get going and maybe get to direct again, I hope.
At the height of Happy Days, okay, how crazy was it? Like were you able to go out to places? Were you mobbed by people? Like, how was it to have that type of fame?
Well, yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like I said, with 50, 60 million people watching you every Tuesday, it did get to the point where it was hard to go anywhere without getting recognized. And I found myself, without even realizing, and then it hit me one day, that when I was deciding to go to a restaurant, without consciously thinking about it, I would only pick places that were dark, where I could be somewhere where nobody, you could kind of almost hide. And it hit me that that's where I was gravitating to, and you just didn't, it wasn't like once in a while, it was all the time. So it starts to be, it takes it getting adjusted to and acclimating to that. And it can mess with your head too, because, you start believing that kind of hype. I wouldn't have gotten mobbed if I went out by myself, but they'd recognize you, come up to you, maybe draw a little crowd. But we did get mobbed when we were together. If we were making appearances back in those days, like if Henry and we went to the Paramus Mall, where Sean probably knows the Paramus Mall, and because it was early on when we were getting really big, and we were supposed to make an appearance at the mall and sign autographs and all that. Well, by the time we got there, because Henry was with me and Henry was getting really hot, there were so many, it was a sea of people, just a sea of people. And they had the little barricades in front of us and there were some security. But within 3 minutes, the security realized they weren't going to be able to keep the crowd back because they started surging forward, and they said, we got to get you out of here, because they knew they couldn't control it. It was getting to be like a mob. So they said, you got to get out of here. I said, where are we going to go? Because we're surrounded. There was a fountain behind us, with the different levels. They said, you're going up the fountain. So here, Henry and I are climbing to get out of there. We climb up a fountain, they whisk us away, send a decoy car and put us on the floor of a limo to get us out of there. I mean, so it was, it was a little like you're the Beatles. All of a sudden, you were the Beatles.
That's amazing feeling though, because like this is the reason why, like, I don't do too many shows with Jeff doing stand-up, because people constantly recognize him from The Irishman, and they're constantly bum rushing him all the time. And I'm not that kind of guy. I want to go up there, I want to do my shtick, and I want to get all, get paid and go home. But I don't want the fame like Jeff does.
Yeah, well, you're smart. You're smart. You stay away from.
You heard stories like people like David Cassidy, and then the Partridge Family cast, and the folks from the Brady's, like you would hear the same thing that you just said, but for David Cassidy, was a guy who, like, he really couldn't handle it. It basically ruined his life.
Yeah, it's I often say to people that in acting school they never have a class on dealing with fame. They should have some sort of, but you need like a class in abnormal psychology, because that's what it is. It's like all of a sudden you're in a twilight zone. It's abnormal. It's not normal.
How did you handle it so well? Like, you're a level-headed guy.
Well, I went through some periods where, it was tough, and I started getting, seduced by it and caught up in a little bit. But I think what happened for us, and Anson and I talk about this, we were very lucky. First of all, we had a guy named Ron Howard who had been a star since he was, he'd been in the business since he was 3.5. And from the time he was 5, he was a star. And here he is acting as very grounded and normal as can be. So he's setting a good tone. How can we start being full of ourselves and get sucked into this crazy world when he's not? And then we also had Gary Marshall and Jerry Paris that were like mentors to us to try to, keep us grounded. And I think I owe a lot to, I had a great family, my parents, my grandparents, and, I think a strong family background. And I was lucky that it didn't happen when I was 13 or 14, when you don't know who you are yet. You don't have a sense of identity.
How old were you when it hit?
I was 20 when we started Happy Days. So I was 21, 22 when it really started taking off. But I'd been through 3 years of college already, a normal public school, high school, upbringing, and just down to earth. I think all those things were so I'm thankful for, looking back, how important that was to keeping me sane and somewhat level-headed.
Before we let you go, a couple of questions from our viewers and the mailbag. Ryan in Hartford asks, I just had his question right here. Here we go. What happened to Chuck?
It's like they started realizing, the producers, that they gravitating to more and more towards episodes with the guys, with Richie, Potsy, Ralph, and Fonz. And the family stuff, the stuff with the mom and dad and the daughter was pretty clear cut. They knew what to do. But initially, for Chuck, they had him as the dumb jock who would come through dribbling a basketball, say something kind of dumb and not much more. And they didn't really find a place to take it. And so they explained to me, the producers, after the first season, that it was a combination of the actor, not being happy, and them realizing, we don't quite know, the show's going in this direction, mutual kind of agreement that, he was off to college. And there he went. He went off to college.
Went upstairs and never came back down. Another question we have is, hey, this is from Dave in New Jersey. You still keep in touch with the cast, particularly Scott Baio?
So we do. I talk to Anson. Anson's like my best friend. I talk to him a couple times a week, and I see Anson all the time. We're as tight as can be. We're tighter now than we were, and we were tight then, but we're even tighter now. As I mentioned, I still stay in touch. I'll see Ron maybe once a year, but we'll email each other a few times. But he's in London right now. He was in Australia. I was in the Czech Republic. So we're all over. Henry, we'll get together for lunch and get on the phone periodically. Marion, I see Marion once in a while. Marion Ross, I saw her a couple of months ago. Went to her house. So yeah, and Scott, I was seeing for a while. We play golf. I used to play golf with Scott. But things in the last year or two, things got a little, with the whole political climate got a little crazy, and so
I guess a real firestorm politically, on social media.
We haven't spoken in a good year or so, but we'll see. Maybe things will kind of calm down. We'll see.
I hope so. Do you do any work since you and Anson are such good friends, and he sings, you sing? Have you guys ever put like any musical?
It's funny. He kind of gave that up. He wasn't really. Yeah, he was singing. Really, he did it for a while back then on the show and a little bit after, but he's really not that into it anymore. And he directed a ton of television. He became a big television director. He directed over 300 hours of television, 300, and
he never put me in one thing.
Oh my God! From everything from Melrose Place to the law shows to Hercules. We've got some projects, and he also started his own product company. He's a real entrepreneur, and they got very busy with that. But we did do one show that we did together, and it's funny, where we did, stuff from the 50s and shared stories and all of that, showed clips, and did a lot of the songs from that era. But we might do that again. It's funny because somebody's been talking to us about that. So I want to keep doing my own thing because I love it, but I also wouldn't have any problem, and I'd be open to doing this with Anson to doing, sort of revisiting that show, because it was a lot of fun when we only did it twice.
Natural
so we had
for
a great time.
Branson, Missouri.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But like I said, I still want to pursue, doing my shows in theaters. I've done some theaters with it and a lot of the jazz clubs in New York. I did 54 Below, like I said, 4 or 5 times. Catalina's Jazz Club out here in LA. And
how about the Blue Note? You may come through there?
Yeah, maybe.
What's third?
Blue Note, isn't that in the Village?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. We'll have to see. I did a place called the Cutting Room in New York City.
Oh, I've done comedy there. It's awesome. What a great room that is.
Yeah, I like the Cutting Room. And also the Iridium Jazz Club I've done.
Iridium is great too.
Yeah. So I've done that. But I'm doing my first symphony in November. I'm singing with a symphony at Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I am psyched. Yeah. It'd be like a pop symphony, pops. So instead of maybe 180 pieces, musicians, it may be only 40, but still, it'll be fantastic. Yeah,
You'll have that sound.
Yeah, I can't wait. Because then once I do this one, it might open up to do some more of that. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, here's the last question. Here's the last question. And now I want an honest answer because they're both dead. Al Molinaro or Pat Morita? Who would you prefer?
Unfair.
No, I need an answer.
I can't.
Come on.
That's impossible. But I will say, I love them both. They were both so great. I mean, affection and love for those guys. But I did, Pat did introduce me. I don't think I ever had the opportunity to go out, like to the bar restaurant with Al, but I did with Pat, and Pat introduced me to a drink, and that I, to this day, I remember the first time. It was a really cool drink. It was vodka. It was coffee, but vodka and sambuca, and it was great. So I had some experiences like that with Pat. I didn't have with Al, but they were both so funny in their own way and such wonderful guys. You can't pick. You just can't.
I think the two most underrated people on the show, personally.
Yeah. Oh, they were fantastic. They were Al. I mean, you could not crack up from both of those guys. You just could not crack up. They were great.
You know what? This was great, Don. We really, listen, we could sit and talk to you for another hour. You were awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, man.
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoyed talking to both of you, and thanks for having me. And yeah, let's do it again, a year from now when I got some more cool stuff to talk about, hopefully.
And if you're coming through New York, you're going to do 54 Below, you're doing any one of those rooms, let us know. We'll plug it on the show. We'll help you fill it. All right, great. That sounds like a good plan, a good deal. Thank you. And as soon as we sign off, Sean's going to start working on that. Metallica. He's going to send you the Metallica stuff, and then you guys are going to be performing at the Friars Club. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All right. We got a future. 2022 is going to be our year, guys. It sounds good to me. It'll be great. It'll be Ralph Mouth and Sean the Mouth. Be fucking perfect. All right, guys. Well, have a great again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Don. Take care. You too. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.